What's up everyone, I'm Dylan. Today I'm going to talk about how I crafted my story in my college applications. And what I mean by this is more of like how I strategized my application to make sure that I was hitting all the points that I wanted it to hit and convey to the reader the kind of person that I was. As you're about to hear, a lot of these things are interweaved throughout my essays so that I made sure that everything was connected. And I know all this stuff sounds really general right now, but I'm about to get into it, so let's go. I pretty much crafted the same story for all my college applications, and this helped me get into Stanford, USC, UCLA, NYU, and more. The thing was, I wanted my college application to be as cohesive as possible, but I wasn't really sure how because I was a very well-rounded person. I had interests in literally a million things, whether visual art, photography, graphic design, musical theater, computer science and technology, psychology, entrepreneurship, innovation, and math. Like, there were so many different things that I was interested in, and I kept hearing on like college app webinars and things like that colleges really value a pointy person rather than a well-rounded person, meaning that they like it when you have a certain angle or a certain edge that you're like super passionate about. Like, I'm all about computer science. I've been doing coding classes and I also coded this app and then I also coded this and then blah 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 blah. And I was like, well, I don't really have anything like that, I guess. I mean, I like art. I've been doing art my whole life, but I don't know if I want that to be my edge. And so what I really wanted to do and the aim that I took was to focus on art and tech, like together, because that's what I want to do in the future. So I think it's important to really focus on the thing that you want to do in the future and maybe what you want to major in or whatever. But at the same time, if you don't know what you want to major in or what you want to do, like I'm still a little iffy, that's totally fine. And you can totally get into a bunch of schools and not know what you want to study. Like, that's fine. I'm just explaining what I did for my application and what worked for me. So like I said, I always wanted to emphasize art and tech anytime that I could. But I also centered my application around one very specific story. For my Common App essay, I decided to write about the challenges of taking care of my 90-year-old grandpa with Alzheimer's because he lived in our house for a few months and it was very difficult for my whole family to adjust. So I talked about how this affected my relationship with him, how it changed the family dynamics, and how I intended to kind of fix these problems, or at least offer a solution of some kind. If you watch this video where I actually analyze this essay, you will see that I offered up a solution of some sort that was an app. And so this app idea I came up with on my own, and I also designed it in Photoshop, like what it would look like. So this app would be a resource for seniors and their families to maintain cognitive health, access educational resources, and organize important documents. It was a way for me to help other people, but it also had a personal connection to me because of my experience with my grandpa. If you want to see what this app actually looked like, I did create a whole video for my USC application, which I'll link above, that actually shows it in action. It's kind of like a commercial for it. So on that note, another reason why I went that direction and wrote about this was because for USC's application, I applied for the Ivine and Young Academy of Arts, Technology, and Business. And so that required a proposal video where I am to propose like an innovation of some sort of my own. So then I was thinking, well, I already have this thing in the works because I am submitting it for USC. Why not just make this my Common App essay so that I can not only just share this story with USC, but also with the rest of my schools? So like I was saying before, I really wanted to emphasize art and tech in my applications. And the way that I did this through this Common App essay, or this solution that I had proposed, was an app. So that obviously covers the tech part. That's the tech side of me. But then also the fact that I designed it and I was in the process of designing it. I wasn't really like programming it yet. So it was all designed. So that connects to art. And then to put this story throughout my college applications even more, I decided to make a drawing of my grandpa, who I write about in this story. I made a drawing of him in colored pencil. I'll show it right here. And it's him in his wheelchair and he's looking out through a window. And I used this as a portfolio piece for the schools in which I submitted an arts portfolio. So not only were they reading the story through my essays, but they were seeing it through my artwork. And that, once again, just ties in art into me again. By doing this, I was able to tie in a personal story to me, the fact that I do art, and the fact that I'm interested in computer science and tech. Kind of relating to the same things, I also wanted to show that I had right brain like creativity and left brain logistics. So what does that mean? I mean, there's a lot of research going on about right and left brain and the differences between those. So people say that you use the right brain for a lot of your creativity and imagination and stuff, and then the left brain is more like analytical. It deals with math, it deals with words, and it thinks a lot more logically. And then usually people lean a certain way into which side of the brain dominates more, I guess. So with that knowledge, I wanted to propose to these colleges that I had both of those things, that I could be creative in my artsy ways, but that I also could do the like analytical logistical side of things. So I made an essay that specifically demonstrated these things. This essay was mainly focused on art and design, as I told the story of how I designed a yearbook cover for my school, but I also incorporated some math concepts at the end to tie that in together. And then I ended up submitting this essay for one of Stanford's supplemental essays, and then I used it also as a UC PIQ. So a lot of them were like different forms of the same essay, and you'll see if you check them out. So basically in this essay, I referenced a lot of art movements and things related to art so that I could prove that I knew what I was talking about and explain where I was gaining inspiration from and show that I had an artistic side. But then I also connected it and said, and I'll go like this when I'm quoting stuff, I connected my artwork to a geometry puzzle, and I explained how I used Bezier curves in Photoshop to stretch points along tangential lines because I was doing a lot of vector graphics in Photoshop, and that in a lot of ways relates to math. I incorporated the metaphor of saying both sides of my artistic equation eventually found balance. So that was my way of really tying together art and math. So that was that. In terms of extracurriculars, this is really interesting because I did a bunch of different things in a bunch of different fields. Like I did art things, I did tech things, but I also did a lot of musical theater and theater related things. But I didn't really want that to be the main focus of my application because like I said, I really wanted to take that angle with art and technology. So I did end up not really explaining as much about musical theater as I could have if I wanted to actually study musical theater and continue that route. For example, I could have in my extracurricular activities section said that I did do a summer intensive for musical theater or that I did a D-task competition, but I actually didn't say that. I simplified most of my musical theater training and involvement into one extracurricular that I just called musical theater and talked about like my involvement in musical theater just in that one activity instead of breaking it up into all these different things. But I did actually have separate activities for like a theater club that I was a part of, and I did a historian job for that, so I was doing kind of like art related things within that. I was doing graphic design and photography, but for a theater club, so I wanted to highlight that separately. And then I also separately highlighted like a job opportunity, like an internship thing that I did for a musical theater camp. So why did I do this? I wasn't really trying to exclude musical theater and like hide it all and not say as much as I could have said about it, but it's just that you only have so much space in your extracurricular activity section. You only have a certain number of slots. So I wanted to fill up most of those slots, or as many as I could, with things that related to art and tech. I made art and technology related things be at a higher priority than my theater related things. Just because I didn't explicitly say like, oh, I did this theater competition, oh, I trained in musical theater, I still found ways to get it into other parts of my application. So For example, I may not have written like a whole essay about it, but I can write an essay about something and just kind of like pop in some certain things or make references to musical theater or my involvement in musical theater in different essays that I wrote or different like short takes. I'm thinking specifically for like Stanford or USC. They have little questions, short answer questions that they want you to answer, and I did pop in musical theater related things within those. Here's an example. I wrote a whole essay that I used for Stanford USC was an essay that I wrote about journaling. So journaling is something that's really important to me and I wanted to write about that, but the way that I wrote about journaling was I wrapped it within this experience relating to musical theater. So I centered the story around this experience I had. It was a very embarrassing experience that I had in my musical theater class where I, messed up. I had a failure and I learned something from it. But I used journaling to help me get through it and to help me clear my mind. And so that's basically what I wrote about in my essay. But see, that's a way where I can like write about two different things at the same time. Like, yes, the essay's about journaling, but I can also make it about musical theater as well. So that's also to say that, yeah, my journaling essay wasn't about art or tech, but it did show another side of me that was more personal and introspective, but still had some tie to like other things that I was involved in. Another way that I was able to get across that musical theater part of me in a very effective way was through my interview. So my interview with Stanford, it was really, really interesting to note because I talked about this whole experience with D-Task, which was a competition, a theater competition that I did, and like the struggles that went into that of like performing and putting on an 8-minute musical with a group of kids with no outside help, with no teachers or anyone helping us. We just kind of put together the script, choreographed it, directed it, and performed it all together on our own. So that was a very interesting experience that I actually had the opportunity to talk about through my interview. So it wasn't even in my application at all, yet I used the interview as an opportunity to talk about something that I hadn't talked about on my application and to give a new side of me. And how I know that this was actually important in the long run was that my interviewer specifically wrote about this and wrote a lot about this on his evaluation for me for Stanford specifically, because I did, if you check out this video, my admissions file, when I looked and I saw exactly what the admissions officers wrote about me when they were considering my application, my interviewer wrote a lot about this experience that I told him. So as you're now seeing, throughout my application, I really tried to make things cohesive or like tied together in some form or another, like somehow tie it back into art, somehow tie it back into tech, somehow tie it back into musical theater. So even though you may have a lot of interests and you don't want to seem too like scattered all over the place, there is a way that you can make it seem to the college admissions officers that you have a certain angle, or at least a certain angle in a couple different things, but that's totally okay to do. So I recommend figuring out ways that you can convey certain parts of yourself that you want to specifically emphasize within all of these different components of your application, so it stays really cohesive and thematic and tied together, and there's a lot of connections throughout. And the last thing I want to say is, please do not lie on your college applications. Sure, you want to angle it in a specific way, you want to strategize the way you're telling things, but you do not want to tell something about yourself that is not true. Honesty is key. Also, college admissions officers are able to spot a lie like that. Trust me, they know what they're doing. They've been doing this for a while. They are easily able to see when someone else is just trying to make themselves sound good. So you can do it. You can craft your story and your application in a way that gets your certain values or passions across without lying or making anything up. It's just the angle that you take it, the approach that you take it. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hoped it helped. I hoped it gave you some new insight or something, whatever. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to ask. I'm also open to editing your college app essay. You can reach out to me via Instagram or YouTube or literally any other way, and I will tell you my availability and my rates. That's all I got for you today. I wish you luck on your applications. You can do this. All right, see you guys later. Peace out.